All right, today we're going to talk about something that hits right at the heart of how we all work, organizational design. Now, we all know AI is changing our tools. That's obvious. But the real revolution, the one that's a lot harder to see, is how it's making our core company structures, the very org charts we live by, totally and completely obsolete.
And no, I'm not just being dramatic here. I mean, think about it. That classic static chart with all the boxes and lines, that symbol of a fixed hierarchy, it's become more than just old-fashioned. In the age of AI, it's actually a strategic liability. It represents a way of working that is just too slow and way too rigid for the world we're in right now.
And if you need proof, here it is. A recent McKinsey report found that while almost everyone is using AI, only 39% are actually seeing a real impact on their bottom line. So what's up with that massive gap? Well, it isn't a technology problem. It is a structural problem. You can't just slap a jet engine onto a horse-drawn carriage and expect it to fly. The whole thing will just fall apart.
Okay, so let's really dive into this. We're going to break down exactly why that old blueprint is failing us. You see, in an AI-powered world, the speed of making a decision is way more important than waiting for layers of approval. But our traditional hierarchies, they're built entirely around getting sign-offs, creating these massive bottlenecks that just kill speed. And you can see this huge gap in the data. The companies that are really winning with AI, they aren't just plugging it into their old, messy processes. Nope, they are nearly 3 times more likely to redesign their workflows from the ground up. And they're over 3.5 times more likely to use AI for deep transformative change, not just tiny little improvements. They're not automating the mess, they're building something entirely new. So this forces us to ask a much more powerful question. Instead of asking, hey, how do we fit AI into our company? We need to be asking, what kind of company can we build now that AI exists? And that question, well, that changes everything.
The answer to that question is being driven by this massive leap in technology that we're calling agentic AI. This is the real catalyst here. This is the why now that's making these new structures not just a good idea, but an absolute necessity if you want to survive and grow.
The difference between the two is actually pretty simple, but it's profound. For the last couple of years, we've all been focused on generative AI. Asking it to write this email or create this image. But agentic AI, that's the next evolution. We can now ask it to do this, to actually execute entire multi-step projects and workflows all by itself.
Yeah, this quote just nails it. Agentic AI is all about bridging that gap between having a great idea and actually getting it done. It moves us from a world of just generating information to a world of executing tasks. And that new capability, it completely shatters the logic of the old siloed org chart.
So, if the old school hierarchy is obsolete, what replaces it? Well, the new operating model is something called a holarchy. It's a huge shift from that rigid pyramid of top-down control to a dynamic network of teams that are aligned horizontally around specific goals and skills.
Let's put these two models head to head. The old hierarchy thrives on vertical control, right? But that creates what's called information latency. Basically, data gets stuck in middle management, and it's all built on these fixed, static job roles. The new model, the holacracy, is based on horizontal alignment. It's powered by total data transparency, and it's organized around dynamic skills, not rigid job titles.
Now, the engine that makes all of this possible is something called the data transparency layer. The best way to think about it is like the organization's central nervous system. It's this shared, real-time source of truth that gives every single team, every person, and even every AI agent instant access to the data they need to make smart, fast decisions, without having to wait for approval from up the chain. So, you're probably wondering, how do you actually build this new type of organization? Well, the source material lays out a blueprint based on 4 core design principles. This is the practical how-to guide for designing a company that's truly augmented by AI. These 4 principles are super agency, latency, talent liquidity, and trust architecture. Let's break down what each of these really means, because when you put them together, they form this really cohesive framework for rethinking, well, pretty much everything.
So what do these principles actually look like in practice? Well, super agency means you're designing for human-AI partnerships, amplifying your people's talent, not just trying to replace them. Latency means you use AI to flatten the organization and just kill those delays. Talent liquidity is about managing skills that can flow to where the problems are instead of managing static job titles. And trust means you build governance and ethics in from the very start.
This right here is one of the biggest, most fundamental mindset shifts you have to make. The entire industrial era concept of a fixed job description, of a static role that someone has to fit into, it's over.
And you replace it with this idea. Instead of managing people who are stuck in boxes, you start managing a portfolio of skills that exists across the entire organization. This lets you deploy talent with incredible speed and adaptability, matching the right skills to the most important problem, basically in real time.
And this quote just brilliantly illustrates the danger of ignoring all this structural work. If you simply apply powerful AI agents to your broken, bureaucratic, high-latency processes, you don't go faster. You just accelerate the failure. You create chaos, not speed. You absolutely have to redesign the system first.
Which brings us to our final and maybe most important section, the new leadership mandate. Because this isn't just some theoretical exercise, right? It requires a whole new playbook for leaders who actually want to build a company that's fit for the future.
Phase 1 involves 3 really concrete actions. First, you've got to mandate a latency audit to find and map out all the delays in your key processes. Second, you establish a talent liquidity metric to actually measure how quickly skills are being learned and deployed. And third, you appoint a governance council before you try to scale any of this to set the rules of the road.
But honestly, beyond any specific action, the biggest change is in the leadership mindset. Your value no longer comes from being an information gatekeeper. It comes from being a context architect. Your job shifts from just mitigating risk to actively amplifying talent. And you have to stop seeing the organization as this fixed machine that just needs to be optimized and start seeing it as a living, learning system that needs to be nurtured.
So let's end with a question for you to think about. As you reflect on your own organization, which of these 4 principles, superagency, latency, liquidity, or trust, represents the biggest hurdle for you guys? Your answer to that question, that's the starting point for rewriting your own org chart.